Hey there riders, Moto Journo Kris here, and I've got Yamaha's MT-10 for test at the moment. Now these are 150 on the road right away, so you know, on the more expensive end of things, but at the same time, if you're interested in something like an R1, but want something a little bit more road centric, this is gonna be an awesome machine to check out, because I tell you what, they've maintained that awesome R1 cross-plane engine, the 1000cc engine or 998cc engine. They've put it in a much more kind of road-friendly, really off its chops kind of package. Obviously this is the king of the MT models and it is absolutely stunning to ride. It's really hard to put into words at the end of the day. So let's have a look at this particular machine. Okay, so let's start at the front end of the bike. Obviously you're getting these really cool kind of fluorescent wheels almost. They are a real standout. This is the ice fluo color scheme, which is what you'll see on the MT-03 as well. It's got this nice kind of matte gray to it, and it's a really kind of, I guess, outstanding or a very vibrant color despite being somewhat of a flat gray. It really makes the bike stand out, particularly when you consider the rest of the bike is, you know, quite dark. One thing to keep in mind is of course that the headlight assembly, that's very futuristic, very transformer-like. Not everyone's gonna like that particular styling feature, but I think at the end of the day, if you enjoy riding the bike enough, you can probably put up with that. But at the end of the day, that's a judgment call for individual riders. You've got 320mm front disc brakes on it. You've got 4-piston Yamaha calipers, a nice powerful braking system. I do have to say, at the end of the day, I kind of felt like the brakes were a little bit gentler than I expected. However, I think the reality is the suspension setup on the front so good that getting hard on those brakes, and because there's not a heap of bite, it's very easy not to realize just how much power there is there, which is a testament to how good the bike is as far as the overall balance. You've got KYB 43mm cartridge forks, fully adjustable, and again, a really exceptional front end setup. Good adjustability there, so for someone looking to really kind of get into a bit of depth with the front fork setup and their suspension setup overall, this bike is going to do it. I liked the SP model when I tested it just over a year ago because it's very easy on the electronic models to dial in a setting using the electronics. Obviously with this you've got to use your tools, but there's plenty of adjustability there at the end of the day. Now, as far as controls, you're getting a pretty decent electronics package on this bike, but you've just got an LCD display, not much wind protection, quite simple switch blocks. You do have cruise control, you do have a quick shifter, nice to have. You've got a traction control system with 3 levels of traction control and off, so you can switch that off. And you've got 3 ride modes, which is 1, 2, and 3. And 3 obviously is the, you know, wet weather mode. 2 is kind of more of a street mode, and 1 is just the absolutely crazy full power mode, which really ramps up kind of the sensitivity of that throttle and gives you some real bite from that engine. And let me just say, mode 2 is pretty extreme on its own. Putting it into 1 is really, really thrilling. And that is all connected, of course, to that cross-plane R1 engine, which they've brought the peak torque down to 9,000 RPM. It's actually a surprisingly easy thing to ride below, say, 6,000 RPM. You know, it's got very nice throttle response. It'll roll along at idle in first gear at, say, 20 kilometers an hour. If you're really doing stop-start traffic, you're not going to be that happy on the bike because it does have quite a heavy clutch, which, you know, is something you've just got to deal with. However, the fueling down low is really, really nice considering how powerful the engine is. And then once you get moving, once you get it past, you know, say 6.5, 7,000 RPM, it really starts to roar. And I tell you what, that cross-plane engine is like nothing else. The way it develops power is just absolutely effortless. It's really, really surprising. Like it feels like nothing else really that I've ridden. And I guess it feels like the old Big Bang R1 as well, but I like it much more in the new engine. I just like the feel of the engine. I love the growl of the engine. It's a beautiful thing to ride, and it really eggs you on to take advantage of the power there. And you can really do that, I have to say, on this bike. You know, it's beautifully torquey, and the suspension setup really, really comes into play. Now, before I move further back on the bike, 17.5 litre tank. I do have to say, I think the worst mileage I got was I put 12 litres in for about 160 kilometres. This thing is quite the fuel guzzler, particularly compared to, say, the MT-07, which is very miserly on the fuel. The The other thing to keep in mind is it's got a really nice engine growl to it, really nice. However, the stock exhaust system's on the quiet side, and even really having a go out on the open roads, it's mainly that beautiful engine growl and that beautiful cross-plane engine sound that you're getting. It'll really benefit from an aftermarket exhaust to open up the exhaust a little bit and give it a bit more bark, but I mean, it is beautiful in standard trim. On the rear, you've obviously got a monoshock, fully adjustable, and you've got a 220mm, I believe it is, rotor with a single piston caliper. And there's really good power on that rear brake, very effective for using through the twisties, and also quite good around town for bringing the bike up to a halt without having to get on that front brake too much, which is a nice feature because, you know, most of us have to do a bit of around town riding to get to the nice roads. Now, as far as the ergonomics, nice upright seating position. I'm 180 centimeters, 70 kilos, and the bike is ideal for me. I can get both feet down flat very easily. There's probably a bit of more room in it for me. Reasonably narrow seat, nice wide bars, great vision through the mirrors, and a great view of that display. So a nice relaxed seating position, but when the going gets fast, you can get really into the ergos of this bike, and it works really well in that regard as well. So you can get pretty sporty on this machine and have a lot of fun on it, even though obviously it's much more upright than the R1. And of course, because of the ergonomics, you feel that speed a lot more. Now, a couple of other features to keep in mind on this particular bike. You've got the quick shifter, as I mentioned, you've got the cruise control, nice features, LED lighting, LED indicators, which again, a nice more premium touch, LED tail light, so all the lighting, very high quality. Only the LCD display, but to me, that's not too much of a concern because at the end of the day, you're only looking at it for your speed and perhaps your gear, and you don't really need a full TFT display on a bike like this, even though it might be something that some people really enjoy. So when it comes down to it, what makes this such an astonishing machine, in my opinion at least, is the fact that for a reasonably large bike, this machine comes alive once you're moving, and particularly as those speeds rise. It feels like a much smaller machine. It feels like a little 250 as far as the handling, how sharp it is, how quick it is to respond to inputs, and it's absolutely on rails. And I really do have to say the power from this particular bike is incredible. The way they've tuned it, I think, really has benefited people riding on the road. Bringing that torque down to peak torque at 9,000 RPM really helps make it a much more usable machine. And of course, as I said, with the ergonomics, because you're upright, you really feel that speed a lot more than you would on something like the R1, where you have to almost be getting a knee down through the twisties. Of course, with this, you're probably going to find yourself really egged on to ride much faster than you perhaps would on many other machines, because not only does it have that incredible power, but the handling is just so beautiful and so easy to push hard and to really have some fun on, that it just makes this an exceptional overall package for the road. And I'm one of those guys who, you know, I'm quite happy with like a 50 horsepower bike. I think that's enough for the road, because with that you can do incredible speeds really at the end of the day. But I tell you what, this is one of the bikes which, like the MT-10 SP, which I tested, I'd be quite happy to trade my Daytona in on, because it's just such an exceptional overall package. One thing I really did notice is the rear end setup. That shock seems on the supple end of things, which, you know, around town it can be a little bit harsher, but like speed bumps and things like that. However, when I got out onto the open road, it was exceptional, because it was just moving beautifully with the road. It was nice and comfortable. Much more supple than a lot of the sports bikes, which can be quite harsh on the rear. And I really did like that rear suspension setup without actually having to touch a clicker at all. It just, the harder I pushed, the better the overall suspensional handling got, and the more it kind of stuck to the road as a whole as a bike, and the sharper that handling became. At very low speeds, you might notice a little bit of kind of lightness to that front steering in traffic where you're doing very low speeds. However, as the speeds rise, this bike just gets better and better. And there is a steering damper there, which definitely helps at high speed, and you're really having a crack. But overall, I think what I come away with on this particular machine is it's such a beautiful overall package. It's unbelievably good, and it's definitely something that I'd think about upgrading from my Daytona to, and that's not something I say very often. one thing that's really worth coming back to on this particular machine with the cross-plane engine is just how the bike develops power. Obviously it's got a beautiful ride-by-wire throttle response. It's been very well tuned by Yamaha. I did leave it mainly in 2 mode because it was just a little bit more relaxed than mode 1, which is just absolutely crazy, and particularly on the road, mode 2 is more than enough. If you're really having a crack on the beautiful roads, you'll probably want to switch it into 1, but in the second mode it slows down that throttle response a little bit and seems to quieten down the engine a little bit, but it's still absolutely off its chops, and the way it generates power is so effortless that it's really something else to ride. It's absolutely beautiful. It's not like as you get up into the rev range, like with some bikes, you know, you're really feeling the revs. With this, it's beautiful with the way it develops that power, and the torque as well, absolutely exceptional. If there's one thing I'd say, it's that I was really copping a bit of a hiding from the wind hitting me, just because of the speeds being carried and the lack of wind protection. And actually after riding this bike, after a day riding it, I was a bit sore across the top of the shoulders, which I can only put down on, you know, kind of holding on to the bike for dear life at sometimes when I really had to go on that throttle. So absolutely exceptional, really good job by Yamaha, and also like particularly good on the road, which is so important from my perspective because a lot of us do have to do some road duties alongside having some fun duties, and this handles the road stuff really well. So if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that notification bell. Let me know your thoughts about this particular model. Do you like the styling? Do you like the idea of the cross-plane engine? Let me know. As always, stay safe out there, and thanks for watching.